Hey, everybody. Welcome to another How to Succeed podcast. This is How to Succeed at Leveraging LinkedIn for Prospecting with Deb Ellenberg. She is a Sandler trainer from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and we're going to talk to her about LinkedIn. The following podcast copyrighted by Sandler Systems Inc., protected by U.S. copyright laws. Like, share, join in the comments. We're recording these live this year, so if you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube right now, you can just chat in the comments and join us in the conversation. If you are not, nothing wrong with that. Subscribe to the podcast, share with somebody that you like, and leave us comments on the podcast. Reach out to us at Sandler.com. Deb, before we get started, I also feel like I should mention a book since I helped write it. It's called LinkedIn the Sandler Way. So if people go to Sandler.com, they can get it for free right now. If you're interested in LinkedIn, check out LinkedIn the Sandler Way. I wrote it about like 7 or 8 years ago now. So we're going to update those with Deb today, but still good stuff. I knew that LinkedIn would evolve and the world would change. So we put some good evergreen stuff in there for you. But I wanted to ask you, Deb, starting off here, what do you feel like is the key to leveraging LinkedIn for prospecting?
Well, I'd say the key is just to start it, just to do it. I think as I was having a lot of conversations with some of our clients and the prospects that that I'm talking to and working with all the time, what I kept hearing is they would say, yeah, LinkedIn, I know I should be on it. I do have a profile, but honestly, I'm just struggling because I'm not exactly sure where to start. I don't know what to do on it. I even had a conversation last night, and one of the guys who's had a business, a marketing business for about 25 years. He was like, I don't even know what to post. So there was a lot of uncertainty where I found that I was talking to a lot of people that just didn't know where to begin. So in answer to your question, I say, you just got to start, it's stepping out of the comfort zone and just doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously the biggest part to leveraging LinkedIn is doing something to leverage LinkedIn. You got to post, you got to reach out to people, connect, start more interesting conversations. I think all those are great. Oops. There's a drawback to being live. What are some of the attitudes you would like us to have when we're thinking about how we leverage LinkedIn?
So I think it's looking at what is your attitude when you think about LinkedIn? What's that belief and about prospecting? Is it something that, I don't know, spending time on LinkedIn is just a time suck. It's not really worth my time. So from an attitude perspective, it's really looking at what is your belief just to begin with and saying, you know what? I can use LinkedIn, that it's a really great tool for creating connections, finding my ideal client, maybe creating some opportunities to engage my ideal client in conversation to see if it's even makes sense to do business together. So it's that mindset shift that, yes, it's not a time suck, but it is worth my time. So it's really looking at what's our attitude when it comes to prospecting in general on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think for me, there's a couple of ideal attitudes. One is I think you have to take a mindset of either marketing or sales. And we talk about this a little bit in the old LinkedIn book. But if you're in sales, your real job is to treat it like a networking event. It just happens to be the world's largest online networking event. And you need to meet some people. You need to deliver your 30-second commercial. You need to start some conversations, maybe mix it up in some groups, see what happens, and see if there's any opportunities for you to get referrals, things like that. If you're in marketing and you're trying to build your company's brand, then I think you're seeing it as like an advertising platform, that there's a lot of attention here. There are ways to buy ads on there, to build large followings and broadcast messages and advertisements to people. But that's a different attitude. That's a different mindset than really what we talk about for an individual salesperson. So this may take us into behavior, and that's okay too. But what are, 3 or 4 things that salespeople can do to really leverage LinkedIn?
Yeah. So from an attitude perspective, it's not coming at LinkedIn to say, oh, I'm going to sell somebody something. I'm not going to put a connection out and do an immediate sales pitch. It's really looking at LinkedIn as it's an opportunity to connect and engage with somebody. So how am I going to do that? I am, I'm going to be on it, but from an attitude, I want to crawl, walk, run, but I want to start creating some of those connections. And the ways that I'm going to start to create some connections is that I might go through some of my folks that I'm already connected with and find out who they're connected with and ask them, can you help me with an introduction? I might get involved in more groups. You had mentioned that. Again, because the more first degree connections that you have, the easier it is to have direct conversations. But what you don't want to do is come at people as a salesperson and sell something and pitch something. It's really about looking at, I want to get to know you. I want to learn a little bit more about you. Let me see if I can help you. And that's the mindset and the attitude that you want to take when you start to do some stuff on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so that takes us into the behavior and the doing stuff. I think a lot of people, like you mentioned, don't know what to do. Maybe it feels aggressive for them to search for prospects and do cold outreach, or they're not sure what to post or what to say and stuff. When you think about behavior, what do you what comes to mind?
Yeah, again, I'll come back to you've got to crawl, walk, run. So kind of start with wherever you are. But from a behavior perspective, it really starts with, again, what are your objectives? And from a sales perspective, it is I want to find who is some of my ideal clients. Who are they? So it's really being able to use the search button to identify who are you really trying to attract? Who are you trying to connect with? And who are you trying to engage? So it's really starting with knowing your ideal client first and what that looks like. So using from a behavior perspective, it's how am I going to use it from using an advanced search? So can I research and search my clients? Can I then create and generate a lead list from doing that search button? Because there's so many different things that you can do on LinkedIn, but then it's okay, if I want to be a content expert and I want to demonstrate some expertise because I want people to know that I know what I'm talking about, what are some of the information that you can share? And the way that you would do that, you could do that through posting. So it's then looking at, from a behavior perspective, how frequently are you going to post? What are you going to post? If you're not comfortable posting, then it's what am I going to do in terms of making some connections with other people as I read their posts and maybe make some very intentional comments on the things that they post. It's not just, hey, great posts. That's really helpful. Nice. But it's maybe adding to, it's asking a question. And it's a little bit more intentional and meaningful as you are identifying and then reaching out and connecting with your ideal client prospect.
Yeah, I love that. It makes a ton of sense. And I think it is sort of just finding your voice a little bit and all of those things. If you are not working with the Sandler trainer, they definitely help. But I think in all of that, the problem most people have, well, it's one of two problems, right? They're either too salesy and they come up with this resume speak, or too aggressive and they're reaching out, or they're just not sure what to say at all. And they haven't really thought about articulating what they do in their business in a way that's casual and conversational and not pushy, directly looking for a thing. So as we
Well, and
move to,
I'll add
yeah,
another
go ahead.
thing another thing that I see is that people treat it like Facebook, and LinkedIn is definitely not Facebook. They're two different platforms. So the stuff that you're going to put on Facebook is not necessarily or might not necessarily be appropriate for LinkedIn. LinkedIn is your professional network. Like you said in the very beginning, it's got the most, professionals out there. It's a growing platform, but it's where your customers or your prospects or your competitors are. And from a very professional perspective.
I think that's a really great point. And building on that, I think you got to look at this long term too, about like building your personal brand and your reputation. So if you're
Mhm.
short-sighted and you're just saying, "Hey, buy from me," and trying to post, stuff to get people to click and buy and stuff, that's not really going to help you long term in what you're doing. Most of us in professional sales are thinking about our career, our reputation, building networks of people and strategic partners, but also clients that are long-term relationships will maybe take us to their next job. That really helps you decide on what you want to share, what you want to say, and the types of stuff you're putting out there. Any other techniques come to mind when you think about how to use LinkedIn? There's obviously a ton of stuff, and buttons move around and go away and all kinds of things, but what comes to mind when you think of techniques for leveraging LinkedIn?
Yeah, so quite a few things, but from a technique perspective, you want to invite people to the conversation. And a couple different ways to invite people into the conversation is definitely through tagging. So, tagging is using that little at button, and then typically the person's name will populate. When you're posting information, you want to make sure that you're tagging people. If you're doing a picture, there's an opportunity to tag on the picture. If you're doing a post, you can tag underneath the post with a number of people on that, or you can come down in the comment section and you can tag a lot of people, maybe adding a question. Hey, what do you think about this? So tagging is one way to invite people into the conversation. Another way to invite people into the conversation is by using hashtags. Now, I will say from a technique perspective, LinkedIn says don't use more than 3. The recommended number is don't use more than 3 hashtags. I see a lot of posts sometimes that people do, and they might have 9 or 10, hashtags. LinkedIn
Hashtag
kind of
too many
frowns upon
hashtags.
that. Yeah. So 3 is the magic number. And I also say give life to the content, whether it's your content or it's somebody else's content. Again, because if your purpose is, I want to meet, I want to connect, I want to learn about others to see if it's worth a conversation to do business together. Because again, that's where when you're prospecting, it all starts with a conversation. So it's really looking at then maybe it's content that you've written or it's content that you've seen somebody else has written, and it's using that send button and send it to somebody that's in your network to say, hey, I read this or I wrote this and I thought that you might appreciate this, maybe given our last conversation or something that I saw that you wrote. Or so it's giving life to a content that you've either written or it's starting to engage somebody else in conversation because it's about them. It's not about you.
I love that. I love sending it directly to people. That's one of my go-to moves for sure. Is when I read something that I'm like, oh, so and so needs to hear this. I always hit that send button and make sure that I fire it off with a note. I also like the idea of breathing life into stuff because I think too many people still rely on like just text in their message, and images or video or recording yourself and sending it up as a post will get a lot more engagement and views than just
Mhm.
typing a short or long text thread with no poll or interesting way to start a conversation. And sometimes LinkedIn shortens those posts, so your good stuff they might not even see if it's 5 or 6 lines down. So making sure that
Right.
you really do something to earn that attention, but also earn the value in your network that you're giving to people and you're trying to get out of it.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say kind of coming from where we started, again, it's really knowing who are you trying to attract? Who's that niche audience? Who is that ideal client that you're trying to attract? I talk to a lot of prospects and a lot of clients that when we first start having conversations, it's like, what does your ideal client look like? Well, I can work with anybody. Yes, a majority of us can. However, where are you focusing your efforts? What's your time worth? So you want to be really intentional in terms of knowing who exactly you want to connect with and what that ideal client looks like. And so on LinkedIn, if you know what that looks like, you can really then kind of hone some of your efforts. So it's not, instead of a waste of time and just, hours and hours gone, you're very intentional with the time that you're spending and the energy and the effort that you're spending when you're on LinkedIn.
Intentional is a great word. I want to highlight that too, especially with all the posting and audience building. When I see people really get into LinkedIn, but even kind of miss the point, is they're trying to get likes and shares and followers. And that's not really a sales strategy. Again, that's more the marketing strategy, but you're measuring the wrong thing, right? You
Right.
only need 10 of your really good ideal clients that, buy from you in a year if they're going to become lifelong learner or buyers from you. But um I just see it is a lot of distractions. That's kind of hard. So I love that intention word there. Any other techniques, tips, or hacks that we should talk about?
Yeah, I would say to the well, and we didn't even talk about this, but in the very beginning, from even setting yourself up for success, if you're just starting out on LinkedIn, you do want to start with getting your profile page set up. So, and it's pretty easy to do. You can always Google it to say, hey, YouTube, how do I set up my LinkedIn profile? But you want to make it easy for people to connect with you. You want to have a picture that really just, it's a professional network. So yeah, you want your face. It's not a couple picture. And quite often I say, when I'm searching and looking at different profiles, if you're in sales and you want people to connect with you, make it easy for them to find you and connect with you. So you want to have that information, whether it's your email or your website or your phone number. Make it easy for them to find you and connect. So I would say, from a technique perspective, make it easy. For people
Yeah,
to
one of the
connect.
things that I highlight on that is I think about like a clear, well lit path. If you're leaving your prospects out in the wilderness to find their way, they're going to get distracted, especially on LinkedIn when there's a lot of other things out there. But if you give them this clear line of like, if you're on my profile, I want you to go download this free ebook, LinkedIn the Sandler Way. And then in LinkedIn the Sandler Way, or when they download it, it says, hey, your next step is to take this online course. And after the online course, it's to talk with a live instructor coach and ask your questions. And then from there, you might join one of our public classes or other things.
Yeah.
There's this clear, well-lit path that we want to guide people through, that they know what that next step is. The more confusing you are with your message, the more options you give people, the less likely they are to take them. So I think that's great tips. Any other
Yeah,
final thoughts?
I would also just add to, when you're making connection requests, a connection request that I'm making is probably the last thing that I do. I might send them a message first to say, hey, I'm really curious. I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. It's not necessarily to connect, because people have their guard up. If I connect
Mhm.
with you, are you going to send me a sales pitch? So it's when I'm sending a connection request, it might be, specifically that, hey, I'd love to learn about you. If you're open to a 5-minute conversation, whether you hit the connect button to, approve, that's great if you think it makes sense. But also, when I do receive connection requests, instead of just automatically connecting with them, I will respond with a message that says, you know what? I'm very intentional. Love to learn a little bit about you. Thinking you probably have some questions for me too. Are you open to hopping on a 10-minute call just so we can learn about each other before we get connected? If you're open to that, great. Let me know what your availability is. But I found that has been the first step in really getting intentional on who I'm connecting with, and even just saying, listen, I like to learn about the people that I'm connected with, because I'm all the time making connections, like with making introductions and giving
Yeah.
referrals. So I don't want to just connect with you just for the sake of connecting. Let's get to know each other first. And
I
I
love
would say
that so much.
95% of the people say, "Oh my God, that's a great idea." I'm like, "Steal it, it's yours."
No, I think that's a great no or low risk way to reach out and start a conversation out of these LinkedIn connections, and you can do that with likes and stuff too on your posts.
Absolutely.
Send people a message, say, hey, I appreciate it, what did you like about it, or I haven't heard from you in a while, what's going on in your world, and start conversations that way. And it's a really great, I think it separates you from other people that you said are just, it's an insurance salesperson adding you on LinkedIn, and then you get pitch slapped with their Calendly link, and asking to buy from them. It doesn't make you feel like a real human being. You wouldn't do that in a live networking event, and I think that's a great way to think about it. Once again, we're talking with Deb Ellenberg, a Sandler trainer from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And if you would like to learn more about Sandler and LinkedIn, go to Sandler.com. You can check out the book. There's a really great white paper about 10 ways you can use LinkedIn for prospecting, and just search for that on the top bar there. If you want help, search a local training center, or if you're an enterprise account, you have more than one location, reach out to the enterprise team there on Sandler.com. And one more thing I wanted to highlight here in our shameless plugs is the Sandler Summit. If you go to Sandler.com/summit, we do a live summit in Orlando every March, and we do a virtual summit in the fall, whichever one it would make the most sense to you. We have really great speakers and thought leaders from around the world, and really cool networking. If you're watching this and you're a networker, go to the Sandler Summit, check it out. Devin says, great job, Deb. Thanks for the insight today. Wayne says, thank you as well. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. Deb's going to ask you for a meeting. I'm a shameless LinkedIn open networker because I do all of the public stuff for Sandler. So I accept all requests there, but reach out to us on LinkedIn. I want to get to know you a little bit better, Deb. At this point in your Sandler journey, how would you define success?
I always come back to the success triangle. So, I want to make sure that I've got the right attitude with any goal that I'm achieving or, striving for. I'm making sure that I'm doing the right things, the right behaviors, and then I'm doing things right. So I'm always honing and practicing and reevaluating what else can I do differently? What could I do better, to improve? And the only other thing that I'd add to that is I am open to failing. So kind of when I look at how I define success, it also means that I'm open to failing, because when I fail, I learn. So, and that's when I grow.
Love that one. And it takes us to our next question, which is, what's been the hardest part? What's the biggest lesson learned for you, or hurdle you've had to get over in order to find success?
I think we all have head trash. I know I have head trash, so I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I have found that while I think that I don't, I have found in the last 4.5 years or 4+ years that I've been now with Sandler, that I have a lot of head trash that sometimes kind of holds me back. So it's really working with accountability partners. It's working with coaches to really help me address some of my own head trash, so then I can push forward and, instead of stuffing it down, kind of deal with it, reframe it, revise it, so it empowers me as opposed to holds me back.
Love that. Do you have a favorite Sandler rule or concept?
I absolutely do. And it was actually, I'll say, on my first vision board that I ever did once I joined Sandler in 2018. It's not how you feel that determines how you act. It's how you act that determines how you feel. That's probably my favorite.
Love that one. I think just the example of going to the gym, right? When you go to the gym, you always feel better leaving than you did going in. But if you're waiting to feel like going to the gym, it could be a while. You know what I mean?
Right.
And same thing happens in sales a lot, or businesses. You're going to feel better after you take the actions, regardless of how you feel when you start. Very powerful lesson. Again, thanks for being on the show. You can find Deb Ellenberg and more information at Sandler.com. You can subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening or watching to it right now. We appreciate that. And don't forget, see us at the Sandler Summit. The next one is coming up here in March. Go to sandler.com/summit for more information. Lots of good stuff there as always. Until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. And if you need more, Sandler. And you can find more information at sandler.com. And we'll see you next time. Good selling, everybody.